Hello and welcome. I'm Melissa Prober and I'm the Executive Director of NCJW Chicago North Shore. I've been asked to be the MC of sorts for tonight's program. Please everyone stay muted unless you're asked to unmute, and we are saving time at the end of the program where we will invite everyone to unmute and socialize so we can make it a little more like our traditional leadership celebration. For those who don't know me, I've been staffing this section since 2006, and I'm now in my 5th year as executive director. I'm the one who floods your inbox every so often with NCJW emails and newsletters. And I normally stay hidden in the background where I can keep my camera off, but I brushed my hair, I added some lipstick, I put on a clean shirt, and here I am. We are going to have 5 toasts tonight. I am drinking sparkling water because I am running the tech side and I want to make sure I show all the correct slides, but feel free to grab your festive beverage of choice. And normally this program would happen in person over a lovely meal, and you would find an informational program at your seat, but we are on Zoom. So I just put the link to our program in the chat. And there you'll find a schedule of the speakers and leadership bios, a schedule of the program, speaker bios, and information about the Leona Z. Rosenberg Leadership Initiative. When you registered, you had the option to let us know what you think makes a great leader. And you saw some of the responses in the pre-event slideshow, but the #1 response of what makes a great leader was vision. And speaking of a leader with vision, it is my pleasure to introduce NCJW CNS current president, Debbie Wiedinghoff.
She needs to unmute.
I know she does. Ooh. Somebody else is there. I'm sorry. I said I'm not sure how great my actual vision is, but my perspective might be good vision. So thank you, Melissa. This evening, we celebrate the past, present, and future leadership of NCJW Chicago North Shore. In the past, we've honored our outstanding leaders with awards: the Hannah G. Solomon Award, the Volunteer of the Year Award, the Advocate of the Year, to name just a few. But this year, we decided to honor all our leaders because, as Jan Schwartz, our Director of Fundraising and one of the organizers of tonight's celebration, often says, we're a team, an amazing team of women, and she is right. Our leadership team is made up of women who are compassionate and community-minded. Each member of the NCJW Gives Back team, Rhea Swider, Vicki Milek, Jill Perlman, Tracy Madansky, Jackie Greenbaum, Holly Smith, and Barb Dollinger, displayed these qualities in their work to support members of our communities that struggled the most due to the pandemic. Our leadership team is made up of women who are compassionate and, Our leadership team is made up of women of conviction, perseverance, and grit. These qualities are at the core of our advocates. Beverly Copeland, Sarah Herson, Jan Schwartz, Jill Lexier, Beth Najberg, Carol Levine, Donna Gutman, who work tirelessly to educate us on legislation and the social injustices that impact our communities. Their advocacy reflects one of the fundamental tenets of Judaism that NCJW's work is grounded in. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Our leadership team is made up of women of curiosity, creativity, and gratitude. The team of NCJW women who organized, facilitated, and shared their expertise at our salons this year: Donna Fishman, Kim Sterling, Judith Maisel, Holly Smith, Ray Luskin, Nora Zuckerman, exhibit these qualities, as do Amy Kleinman and Susan Blumberg-Cason, who are collaborating to bring us programming that integrate advocacy and the arts. Not only do these women have these qualities, but they instill them in others. Our leadership team is made up of righteous women of great courage. Sherry Petlin, Kathy Carmody, Gail Nelson, Anita Weinstein work selflessly to protect and support survivors of domestic violence and to raise awareness and expose predators in hopes of curbing the growth of human trafficking. And finally, our leadership team is made up of women of wisdom and perspective. During the first 2 years of my presidency, I've looked to so many for knowledge, guidance, and support. Women like Robbie Schreiber, Donna Fishman, Sue Reifus, Cindy Wolfson, Kathy Carmody, and especially our executive director, Melissa Prober. They have all helped me to understand my role as president and the importance of making decisions through a lens that includes our section as a whole and all its stakeholders. With this in mind, the most critical component to ensuring our section's future is the continuation of strong leadership. Without a leadership succession plan, our section could suffer the fate of NCJW Columbus, which will disband on June 30th after more than 100 years of service. As Nikki Block, Columbus's final president, told the Cleveland Jewish News, without proper leadership and board level participation, NCJW Columbus was unable to continue its many functions and thus had no other option than to close its doors. I'm excited to announce tonight that we do have a plan, a leadership succession plan. In my final year of my term as president, we will work with current members to match their passion and skills with existing and new initiatives. We will work to grow our existing committees, not only to create a pipeline to leadership, but to include diverse voices to make our programming more relevant. And we will identify potential leaders from both within our section and from the greater community and provide them with opportunities for leadership training. All of this is made possible because of the generous bequest our section received from one of our most dedicated and forward-thinking past presidents, Leona Z. Rosenberg. To honor and to continue her legacy, we have created the Leona Z. Rosenberg Leadership Initiative. Melissa Prober will be spearheading this program that will be designed to empower women to make an even greater impact in the world. It will provide participants with the opportunity to learn from accomplished women leaders in the community and to develop their own leadership skills and style. Many of you have already recognized the importance of this new initiative, and I thank you for your generous support. If you have not contributed to the Leona Z. Rosenberg Initiative, please consider doing so to help ensure that our section continues to have a vibrant and committed leaders to keep our section at the forefront of social change. And now I'd like to make 2 toasts. Please, lift your glass to the amazing team of women of NCJW Chicago North Shore who accomplished so much this past year, and to the future leadership of our section in particular. I'd like to lift my glass in particular to Kim Sterling for becoming our section's first president-elect and to whom I will pass the gavel in July 2022. I look forward to working with you, Kim, and our amazing team of women in the coming year. So cheers for that. And now we'd like to mark this occasion as we emerge from the confinements of the pandemic and launch our new leadership initiative. I've asked Robbie Schreiber, our section secretary, to lead us in the Shekienu, and I invite the past presidents with us this evening, and I'm going to list you. Donna Gutman, Donna Fishman, Carol Levine, Jill Lexier, Nancy Liebman, Stacy Safe, Marilyn Slutsky, Evie Levin, Terry Vismantis, and Ellen Gusson to unmute yourselves and join Robbie. And there's Robbie.
Okay, are we on?
We're on.
Okay, ladies, sing with me. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehecheyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh. L'chaim.
L'chaim. Thank you, Robbie. And now back to Melissa.
Thank you. And thank you to our past presidents for
Yes.
participating. So many of you have been there over all of these years to give me guidance, comments, assistance, and I appreciate and value you so much. And I would now like to introduce Marilyn Cohn, who couldn't be here tonight, but earlier today recorded her tribute to Leona Rosenberg, who was Marilyn's immediate past president, who preceded Marilyn and was really her mentor, her leadership mentor. So I'm going to share this with you.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Cohn, and I'm a former president of Chicago section and a mentee of Leona. Leona Rosenberg was president of the Chicago section in 1980, along with Betty Barnett and Ruth Levinson. I followed as president, and she was my friend and mentor. Her accomplishments were many throughout her life, as was her influence on others, empowering them to do great things as well. In my opinion, she was a true leader who taught me a great deal about mobilizing the troops in order to get important work done. Leona's personal rise from the midst of the Depression impressed upon her the importance of bridging adversity through knowledge. She was a trustee of the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and won its Scopus Award in 2002 for her still ongoing work in endowing scores of scholarships to Jews and Arabs alike. I don't care if they ever thank me. The important thing is to get an education, she often said. After graduating from high school in Fort Wayne and in Indiana University with honors, she was in the first class of women to receive an MBA from the University of Chicago. She taught business classes at Roosevelt University. She then met her husband and lived in Hyde Park until she moved into the Hancock building, where she lived for over 40 years. One time we went out to dinner in Hyde Park and she showed me where she had lived. She loved Hyde Park. As early as 1959, 40-year-old Leona was a mover and shaker in creating social change through volunteerism. She and Pauline Penn, both members of the Chicago section, founded Thresholds as a project of NCJW to address the mental health issues of the homeless and those suffering from addiction. Within 3 years, it became an independent social service organization that provides services to people with mental disorders and substance abuse problems, with special attention to the homeless. Last year, it served 16,000 adults with a budget of $91 million across 75 Chicago locations. Her thoughts on this amazing feat: she said, "I was the only woman in those days with a car and could walk up 3 flights of stairs to get donations. She taught me that you have to ask for the money and ask high or you don't get it." Leona's depth of knowledge, commitment to social policy and skills, and vision and organize a project, have a plan to get it done, and inspire others to get involved was remarkable. As a result, the arc of her life brought her into powerful circles in Chicago and beyond, where she was prized for the modesty of her character and pleasure in the smallest of things. Leona was forever interested in the lives of others than her own. Although Leona passed away in 2019 at the age of 98, her legacy lives on through her many impactful achievements and contributions. I will always remember her for her tenacity and kindness and her special love of NCJW.
And back to me again. So thank you to Marilyn for that wonderful tribute to Leona. And now I would like to introduce someone who has been one of my NCJW mentors, someone who has always made herself available to me for help and advice, and it's Carol Levine. Carol is a longtime social activist and advocate. In her NCJW life, she has served as president of the Chicago section before the merger making the Chicago North Shore section. She was the Illinois State Policy Advocate. She served 2 terms as an NCJW National Board member, plus an additional term as a National Recording Secretary, and then an additional term as a National Vice President. She also served on the board of the International Council of Jewish Women. She currently serves as chair of Courts Matter Illinois, a coalition of organizations and individuals working to ensure a federal judiciary, including the Supreme Court, that is comprised of judges committed to upholding core constitutional values. And Carol is also a board member of Chicago Women Take Action. Carol, I turn the microphone over to you.
Thank you very much, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to what I hope will moderate what I hope will be a really fascinating discussion between 2 women that I think everyone will enjoy hearing from. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to introduce our 2 panelists, Anna Rubin and Sammy Moschenberg. So let me start with Anna, whom I think most of you probably don't know, and then I'll get to Sammy, who many of you do know. Okay, Anna is lead organizer at the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs. She rejoined JCUA in 2017 after working as the Avodah organizing fellow from 2015 to 2016. In the intervening year, Anna worked as a national field organizer with Interfaith Worker Justice, organizing around issues of worker rights and immigration justice across the country. For the past 3.5 years, she has been organizing JCUA's base around immigration justice campaigns, as well as working with JCUA's Congregation Partner Network and North Suburban organizing team. Anna is a graduate of Princeton University with a degree in religion and Judaic studies. And she also tells us that she is Lake Michigan's #1 fan. And we'll have to ask her a little more about that later on, because I thought I was Lake Michigan's #1 fan, but we'll see. Now, let me get to Sammy. Sammy is an independent consultant working with progressive organizations to help strengthen grassroots capacity and engagement. Prior to starting her consultancy in 2014, many of us know her as the director of Washington operations for National Council of Jewish Women, for whom she worked for more than 30 years. During that time, she created and led numerous grassroots training efforts on advocacy, coalition building, and other related topics. She was instrumental in creating NCJW's benchmark judicial nominations campaign, which is why I now lead Courts Matter Illinois. And she continues her involvement with NCJW's federal courts work as a consultant. Among many honors Sammy has received is included NCJW's Hannah G. Solomon Award. She was named one of Women E-News's 21 Leaders for the 21st Century in 2008. She's been listed 3 times on the Forward 50 list of influential Jewish leaders. And she's participated in the executive cohort of the CELA program led by Rockwood Leadership Institute of Trainers. Just so you know, she is a doting grandmother and is active in her home community of Alexandria, Virginia, as well as in Cape Town, South Africa, where she has a second residence. Sammy has a master's degree from Loyola University of Maryland and a BA from Shimer College right here in Illinois. So let me explain a little bit about what we are going to do, because we're going to take these two very competent women and have a discussion about leadership. But as you can see, they come from very different generations. So we think that may influence their perspectives on leadership. And so we've put together, well, I've put together a few questions for them, not a lot, because we don't have a lot of time. And we're going to go back and forth between Sammy and Anna. I'm going to stay out of it and let them respond to these questions. We'd like you to get involved, who are part of the audience, by, if you have questions, putting them in the chat so that at the end of our conversation, we can get to your questions. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. Now, all good conversations should always have a disclaimer. So I'm going to give you a disclaimer right now. The opinions expressed by Anna and by Sammy and me are theirs. They are not the opinions of their organizations or contractors or whoever that they work for. They are their opinions and their opinions only. So before I jump in, I also wanted to share with you just two really sort of pithy leadership quotations that I thought were appropriate for as a starting place for where we are. So I'm only going to share two, although I have four really good ones. So I'll send them to you. The first is from the poet Muriel Strode. And she said, "Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." So that's my first leadership quote. My second one is one I think most of us have heard before, but I consider it one of the best leadership quotes ever, and it's from Eleanor Roosevelt, former First Lady. And she said, "Well-behaved women rarely make history." So keep that in mind as we begin our discussion on leadership. So let's jump right in and talk about leadership. For both of you, what makes a good leader? Who do you want to learn from, and who do you want to follow? And to make it a little more complicated, when you stand in front of a group at the podium, what characteristics would be most important for you to convey to others who are looking to you for leadership? Now, which of the two of you want to jump into that? You're both on mute. Somebody has to start.
I would love to have you start, Sammy.
Okay. For me, what makes a good leader is vision. I mean, the ability to be able to see ahead and have a sense of where they want to go, passion, and a willingness and an ability, because they're not always the same thing, to collaborate. I think a good leader is collaborative. And when you ask who do I want to learn from and follow, I mean, it's just about anybody. I'm thinking of some of the women who are on the call today, who over the years, you know, they say I trained them, but I learned a great deal from them. I certainly learned a great deal from a couple of their mothers, and you know who you are. So I guess that would be important to me, is to be open to learning from anyone. So Anna, why don't you go and then we can talk about the last part, I guess.
Yeah. I agree with those characteristics. And I'm also thinking about when the leaders who I most respect and who I look to follow have a consistent practice of checking in with their people and really being connected to the communities and issues that they work with and that they work on, that they care most about, and that they see their role as leaders not as a position removed from their community, but as a position that is necessarily because they are part of whatever community is that they are working with and for. And yeah, I think I think it's, you know, similarly to Sammy's answer, I am here, I think, in my job and the work I do every day. I always say I'm here to follow the voices and lessons and experiences and vision of those most directly impacted by the issues that I'm working on, right? That is how I think about it. But that feels kind of narrow for this conversation. That feels kind of like, you know, job specific or, you know, campaign specific in some ways. But I think what that really means is I want to follow those who are leading from their personal experience, right? Those who are not necessarily tied to metrics or philosophies or theologies or a specific ideology, right? But it's, I am leading because my experiences have called me to lead. And so that's how I'm, and that's how I'm going to see the change that I want to see in the world. So that's...
Anna, I agree with you. And I think the last part of that question about when you're in front of a podium, I sort of stopped there because I think some of the best leaders are not the ones who are standing at the podium.
Totally.
They're not the ones who are officially, you know, giving instructions or, you know, those may be, they may be leading a task or something like that. But I think more of that kind of ability to collaborate and ability to look to the people who are taking a lead because of a certain personal urgency. And yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I think it's very, right, like, again, sort of in the organizing work we do, we'll use a term like a member or a leader. We'll talk about sort of leadership development and think about all of what goes into developing leaders. And I think, right, so often as leaders become more involved and invested in their work, their public presence in some ways goes, not diminishes, but there's just less of it, right? There's more of the work they're doing to get other people in front of the podium, right? They're more of the work they're doing to kind of prepare people and make sure that they are able to stand strongly on their own 2 feet, talking and working on whatever issue or campaign they're working on, right? And so it's this interesting shift of, it feels like we are developing leaders in order to get them away from the podium sometimes, even though there's also obviously leadership development that needs to happen to
Right.
get people in front of the podium also.
Right, and I think having lived through the Trump era, where it was all about having the spotlight on you, that leadership was conferred by the spotlight. I mean, what he used to refer to as ratings, getting the best TV ratings, that was the most important thing. I think personally, as well as I see, and maybe this is going to get into something we're going to talk later, there's a real revulsion to that. And there's a real sense that you don't want to have a leader who encourages a cult of personality. You know, you talked earlier, Debbie talked earlier, or someone talked earlier about the Columbus section. It's sad. I mean, and sometimes sections have very strong leaders who everybody identifies with and who are leading the section over and over again. And without them even wanting it to be, they become so identified with the NCJW section that nobody else wants to step up because they're not that person. And if that person's ready to step down or leaves town, everything falls apart. And I think that that's a pitfall of leadership that you have to really work hard to avoid.
So let me jump in with another question and sort of move this in a slightly different direction. Okay. We've watched, particularly over the last year, the growth of a lot of movements. We've watched the Black Lives Matter movement, the Sunrise movement on the environment, United We Dream, made up and led by the young DACA leaders, a number of the voting rights movements and groups, all of which have been led by young people with much different strategies than their elders, so to speak. Are we witnessing a change in leadership strategies as these groups and movements, and many of them are calling themselves movements, take hold? And what are you learning from this, each of you, as consultants and organizers? What are you learning from this? And has watching this changed your style of leadership? What are the takeaways as you see this happening?
I think Anna, when she talked about her idea of leadership and who she looks to, really sort of reflected some of these new strategies. Because the short answer is, yes, there is a change in leadership strategy, a welcome change. There are still some movements led by young people that are very personality centered. I have to say many of them are male dominated organizations. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. But I think a lot of these movements are non-hierarchical, where they don't have a clear line of leadership. It's more a sort of group that takes responsibility for leadership. And as Anna said, it's also very much about checking in with the people and communities directly affected by what's going on. I mean, the Sunrise movement is young people who are concerned about environmental justice and who come from communities most affected by environmental degradation, and who are very rooted in their communities. So, and I'm still on a learning curve with this. I'm still, the non-hierarchical part is a sort of way I've always kind of regarded things. But I think a lot of the other strategies and a lot of the other leadership cultures are new to me, and I'm learning a lot from it. And I'm even having some difficulty putting my finger on all of the ways in which I've learned from that as somebody who's 70.
Well, and I was actually gonna circle back to where you landed at the end of the last question, because I think to exactly the point you were just making of something I am trying to learn is, right, the actual sustainable way to build leaders is to ensure there are enough people who feel empowered, bought in, who see the work they're doing in their own self-interest and in their interest to take action every day in some way, that it doesn't become kind of this charismatic leader position. But one of the hardest things I think about the work I do is when a leader I've been working with for 2, 3, 4 years, they move to a new city, they go to grad school, they get a different job, so they can't take on the same roles, whatever. It's like, oh, but we've worked so hard, you're really like, you're in the work, what's happening. But it's also just a beautiful moment to recognize it is not about one person, right? Like, yes, this one person has had the journey they've had and the growth they've had, and they've influenced the work in incredible ways. And there always needs to be, the community of people who have been doing the work alongside them in order to ensure it will keep going. And so I think when we were talking last week about this question, I think I was sharing that I was struck by actually how many conversations I am having often about what we can learn from previous movements, from previous generations, from, the civil rights movement, from the garment worker organizing in the 1920s, from our own histories and traditions. What about the organizing they did can we very consciously bring into the organizing we do now? And in some ways, I think that sometimes feels new for people, of like, oh, really trying to dig into what is my history, what is my past, what is my tradition? Can I ground in that as a leader, as an organizer, as an advocate? Can I make this personal to my community or to my community's history, and lead from that place of knowing who kind of my movement ancestors or my personal ancestors are, and bring their vision into the work I'm doing. So I'm trying to be a little bit more grounded in history and wisdom of others in the work I do, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to remind people we've got a couple questions, or some statements that I'm going to share at the end in the chat, and a question or two. So if you think of things you want to ask, because I don't have a whole lot of questions because we have to keep this short. But move on to my next area with Sammy and Anna, because I find this sort of fascinating. And of course, this is the political junkie advocacy person that I am. We've always, and particularly in NCJW, we push all the time, and you hear it in lots of organizations, for new, younger, more diverse leaders at all levels of organizations, and in government and in business. And we hear this constantly. We need newer, younger, more diversity in our leadership. The average age of a US senator right now is 63. And the average age of some of our representative in the US House of Representatives is 58. But the median age in the United States of America is 38.2. Okay, that's the data. I'm wonky like that. Is our political leadership out of step with our population based on age, as well as perhaps based on politics? What do you think?
I would contend that those people in Washington are not necessarily leaders, first of all.
Mm.
You know, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell have leaders, the word leader in their title. But I like some of them better than others. And I, you know, go along with some of their ideas. But my experience has been, these folks aren't necessarily leaders. They're part of an old system that is not inclined to either grow or change. They have no built-in, except for elections, having to run for election. And we all know about that. And I'm not saying we need to bring in cyber ninjas, but we know that elections are corrupted by money and dark money. But aside from that, they have no reason to collaborate. They have no reason to bring on new leaders. Some of their staff people have leadership qualities, they're younger staff people. So I think it's a problem, but I don't think it's a leadership problem. I think it's a political problem.
Right. I would say I definitely think our political leadership is out of step based on politics, to the second half of the question. And I think that's a really interesting point, Sammy, that right, so many of the people in government aren't leaders, are I think elected officials can say, I take my leadership from the people who elected me. I take the lead of those who are going to be right voting me back into this seat in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years or whatever it might be. And so it's, you know, it's not me making the decisions, it's my constituents making the decisions, it's my electorate. And I think what's interesting is I actually view some of the politicians who I most admire, I think I admire, and you're making me realize this now, because they are actually acting like leaders, right? They are being proactive in their political decisions. They are going against potentially their electorate or pieces of their constituencies in order to say, this is my vision for the country, or this is my vision for my state or my city or whatever it might be. And so I am going to work to enact that vision, whether or not, you know, whether or not that's going to get me elected again next time, which, you know, we can debate if that is a good strategy. If it's a long-term thing, then you need to get elected again in order to enact it. But all to say, I think, you know, I don't like it when my elected officials don't listen to me, obviously, but I do think you have sparked for me how I view the politicians I admire versus the politicians I don't admire. And I think sometimes what I admire about the politicians I do admire is that they take risks for what they see as the better results of the nation or the population at large, or those who are being most directly negatively impacted by current policies.
Right, taking risks is key.
So
yeah, right. I think that's a key piece of leadership we haven't really dived into. But, yeah.
So let me ask this is my final question before, if we have time. and Melissa, you'll have to tell me if we have time, get to any of the questions. I hope others are following the chat because there's some great comments as well as questions in the chat. Is it time for those of us who have more gray or silver in our hair, whether it shows or not, to step back and make room in leadership positions for those who are younger and represent the growing majority of the people? At NCJW, we talk a lot about wanting younger women in leadership, but for us here in Chicago North Shore section, that means women in their 50s, and that's younger. We're not talking about 20 somethings, we're talking about 50 somethings and 60 somethings in some cases. So is that a good leadership strategy?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I don't think, first of all, I think a strong organization is a diverse organization in every way, including by age. The baby boomer generation is one of the largest generations in history. So there are a lot of older women, and their lifestyle, many of them have lifestyles and situations that allow them to get involved. So a lot of times looking for new leaders means looking for new people who are older. There used to be a sense among a lot of NCJW sections that if we could only find 30 and 40-year-olds, our section would last forever. Well, 30 and 40-year-olds have a different idea of what they want to do, have different time commitments, and frankly, are not so sedentary. So you might have a 30 or 40-year-old even who is going to be a leader for 5 to 10 years and then move on just because they're not going to stay in the same town, or their career path changes and they have less discretionary time. So there's no magic in either sustaining a section with younger women, or in having better leaders because they're younger. I think the key is to be open to leaders at any age and to understand if you're going to bring on new leaders, or if you want to attract a diverse group of leaders, you have to be ready to listen and learn from them about what they need and what their vision is of leadership. And that's what keeps an organization, I think, dynamic and growing and changing.
You want to add to that, Anna?
No, I was hoping Sam would go first because I really appreciated when you said that before. And I think that's a lot about, right, like you were saying, it's important to have a diverse organization in every way. When we think about intergenerational organizing and intergenerational leadership, I think for us that will often mean 15 to 35 and then 55 to 75, right? Like you kind of skip some of those years in between, and I think that's exactly to Sammy's point of people's priorities shift, things in their lives change, what they're looking for, how they're able to take action, how they're able to kind of balance what it means to be in the public sphere and also be in their family or their private sphere, is often more complex during those years, whatever it might be. I think it is so much about, it is so not about a specific age or a specific stage of life. And it is so about people being both willing to learn and people being willing to share what their knowledge and what they know, right? And people being willing to say, I am hear with humility and humbleness and open ears and open eyes, and want to take in what it is I can learn from this. And I am willing to share, right, my own personal experiences, my own wisdom, my own perspective on this issue, whatever it might be. And I think that is true no matter what age people are coming in from. And so encouraging that, or I guess having kind of the same expectations around leadership, no matter the age, is what can make everyone come to the table.
I'm going to give a slight disclosure. I may get booted off of this Zoom in a minute. So I'm getting warnings from my computer. So I want to go to a couple of quick questions from the audience from before I do. I first wanted to say that Kathy Carmody asked if whether or not we are building sustainable leaders or building leaders who learn how to make sustainable change. And I thought it was, I'm not sure we can answer that, but I thought it was an interesting concept.
Well, I think that that Kathy's right, that we're talking about sustainable change, because a sustainable leader gets us back where, what does that mean? Are you going to have the same leader for a long time? You want to make, hi Gracie, you want to make sustainable change, and you want to be able to support your leaders and have your leaders support their, constituents or their colleagues, their comrades, but it's more important to make sustainable change, I think. But that's a great point.
Yeah, I had a roommate who had a hot take that they would often share with us, that maybe this work isn't supposed to be sustainable for us personally. If we were all working in a sustainable way, or if we were able to make the change we wanted to see by working in a sustainable way, probably we would have many of the changes that we have seen right now, right? It's you may need to risk, you will likely have to put your body, brain, mind, mental state in some way on the line, or risk putting it on the line at times in order to make the sustainable change, right? And so I think, for many leaders, there will often arise a time of having to ask yourself, will I risk putting myself potentially in a not sustainable situation because I believe that risk is worth creating that sustainable change?
Right.
There is also a lot of discussion in the chat about, if it's not broke, why are we fixing it? What's wrong with some of the old ways we've been doing things? And should we not be honoring our past and building on that?
I think
Yeah.
go ahead, Anna. Go ahead, Anna. No.
I was just gonna say, I think that is true, right? And I think that's one of the lessons that people are constantly learning is, for example, like, why do we go into every budget cycle in the city of Chicago pretending like we don't set a budget every year? Why do we go, into every legislative session and reinvent the wheel on how to lobby or how to advocate for things, right? And we don't. And after a certain point, we say, like, this is how this is most effectively done, and this is how we can do it. And I think the reality is, the political landscape is changing and shifting, right? If you're thinking about legislation, politicians are interacting with constituents differently. This whole Zoom world has made us really innovate and have to deal with systems change in a different way. I think our actions are getting more creative, are getting more targeted, more directed, what is going to be effective to move people is going to shift, because once something becomes a norm, it no longer is going to be agitational. It's no longer going to make people perk their ears up and say, oh, I need to listen. This is something new.
Right.
And so I think it's both learning from and innovating. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
not so helpful.
I
Sammy.
agree. I agree. I think, you know, I think that people do try to build on the past and learn from the past, but the bottom line is there's still racial injustice, for example. There's still war. There's still hunger. So it's not like whatever we did in the 60s changed that. It goes in cycles. Sometimes things are better than not, but those problems still exist. So we always have to innovate and be creative, and more importantly, be expansive and engage more and more people, because there's no one right way to do things, and there are persistent problems that just haven't gone away. So
let me ask a question before, in case my computer decides it really wants to reboot, and it's going to do it no matter what I do. Do you think most, if I put someone, Anna, your age, and someone, Sammy, your age, who weren't as skilled as both of you in a room and said, have a discussion about leadership, it would go as smoothly as this one has?
why not?
Sure.
Especially if we had such a gifted moderator. No, why not? I think the bottom line is respect. I mean, yeah, if you put somebody has a different value system and a different set of politics, who was one age with somebody who's another age, that's one thing. But if you have people who are kindred souls and share values, the rest is easy to negotiate and discuss. And that's the beauty. I mean, just to sort of bring things full circle, that's the beauty of being part of NCJW. You're part of an organization, which is in fact a movement made up of women who are like-minded and like-souled and have very different, extremely different approaches, very different personalities, very different ideas on how to do things. But the bottom line is you're with women who share your values and share your, devotion to a more just, peaceful world. And that makes all the difference. And,
Well, let me first apologize to those whose questions we didn't get to. And let me thank Anna and Sammy for your wisdom and for sharing your thoughts and for helping us launch our leadership initiative. I knew Leona, and she was a fabulous woman and a wonderful leader. And she would have loved this discussion, and she would have loved both of you. So I'm glad we were able to do this tonight. And I thank you both from the bottom of my heart.
thank you.
And I'm going to turn things back. I didn't get booted off yet, so that's good. I'm going to turn things back to Melissa.
Hi, it's me again. Now I am here to lead a toast to the NCJW Board of Directors and to thank them for their leadership. Let me do that. It is the board that keeps us moving towards our section goals, and I wanted the opportunity to thank them. But first, I want to start by thanking this year's nominating committee. It's a job that is so hard to recruit for. It is so hard to get people to join the nominating committee, but it is so important because that is the future of our section. And this year's nominating committee did an amazing job. And we've got some great people joining our board. So thank you to Kathy Carmody, Sue Reifus, Sydney Wolfson, Sherry Petlin, Barb Dollinger, and Donna Fishman for all your work. So on to our outgoing board. This has been an unprecedented year. They've been amazing. There are members of the outgoing board who've never met each other. There are members of the outgoing board that I've never met in person, but meeting and working on Zoom didn't stop them. They volunteered last spring, not knowing what the future would hold and how long could this pandemic last anyways, but have fearlessly guided us through this year. And then similarly, we've got incoming directors who haven't met in person, but they also stepped up when called upon to offer their leadership, and I'm so grateful. So first, I want to welcome and thank our incoming board members. We've got Donna Fishman returning to the board as Director of Community Service. And then we've got 4 new board members at large: Amy Rubin, Bonnie Braverman, Lisa Goldberg, and Julie Newman. Some of you I know well, some of you I have yet to meet, but I look forward to working with you all as our section continues to make meaningful difference in our community and the world. And now I want to thank the directors who are stepping off the board, but we hope they will stay involved. Vicki Mylock, Judith Mazel, and Jill Perlman. Thank you for your hard work and dedication over the last 12 months. And thank you to our continuing board members. You make change happen. You are innovative, daring, caring, strong, savvy, and outspoken. And we couldn't do this work without you. Thank you to our continuing directors, Beverly Copeland, Barb Dollinger, Sarah Herson, Sherry Petlin, Jan Schwartz, and Holly Smith for your service and for all you have and will accomplish for NCJW Chicago North Shore. Our section is an amazing collective of progressive voices, and your leadership guides us as we face these challenges head on. Finally, I want to give a particular thank you to our section officers who are continuing for another year. Rhea Swider for your work as treasurer, as well as for your work in developing NCJW Gives Back. Thank you to Kim Sterling for your financial analysis and advice, and thank you for entering the leadership pipeline as president-elect. Thank you, Robbie Schreiber, for your work as board secretary. You are the keeper of our section history, which will guide future generations of NCJW leaders. And then a special thank you to Debbie Wiedinghoff, who has become my close friend and partner in this work, and who understands that for our section to achieve its mission to turn progressive ideals into action in an ever-changing world, that we need to adapt and grow and focus on our goals and work together to make lasting change. And so to all of you and to all of the past and future NCJW leaders out there, I raise a glass and toast you, thank you, and l'chaim. And it is now my pleasure to turn the microphone over to another NCJW leader who joined us only a few short years ago, but jumped into the deep end of our section swimming pool feet first. So I want to introduce our section director of fundraising and so many more things, Jan Schwartz, who is going to toast to our section's future. Jan?
Okay. Do you hear me? Am I on the spotlight? No. Okay. Tonight, we have celebrated leadership through many lenses. After all, leadership is how we started when our founding president, Hannah G. Salmon, said no to serving coffee at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago. She instead organized and led the first Jewish Women's Congress in 1893. As we all know, the National Council of Jewish Women was then conceived, dedicated to faith and humanity through religion, education, and philosophy, and humanity. That was the beginning of a long tradition of leadership to ensure safer and healthier lives for all those in need, with one objective: to improve the lives of women, children, and families. For the last 128 years, NCJW has thrived because of our leadership skills and the system of leadership built between our national organization and section to promote social change through legislative public policy advocacy and through community service. This double-edged approach works, and we've seen it over and over again from our work in civil rights, women's rights, reproductive rights, domestic abuse, human trafficking prevention, voting rights, immigration rights, and the list goes on. An example of this is how in 1935, National began a new program known as Contemporary Jewish Affairs. This was a manual, this was a training program, and the National really helped sections learn how they could impact their neighborhoods. Many Chicago and North Shore section projects came out of this initiative, including neighborhood houses, extended summer camps, kindergarten schools, infant health clinics, and services to prevent deafness and blindness. Among them was Council Camp in Wakanda, Illinois. It serves struggling mothers and children, single mothers and children, so they could have respite time in the summer. And then in 1938, Jewish children who had been rescued from Nazi Germany through the German Jewish Children's Aid, another organization that NCJW helped form, they found respite and normalization through our summer camp program. And then once again in the 1950s, Council Camp provides special programs at summer camp for handicapped children and their families. Sometimes it went the other way. Section programs became national programs and then went on to become federal programs used by all. An example of this is the preschool program Head Start that North Shore section began in 1950. It later became a program of nationals and ultimately was federally funded by the government and still exists today. And then there's Threshold that we talked about earlier tonight that started in the Chicago section in 1959. Thank you, Leona and Paula Penn. And it still is not only stands today, but is a thriving, important, wonderful independent organization. I have not even begun to sing the multiple praises of the programs our section developed and the fruits of what we have advocated for over the last 50 years. This is just a tidbit from our newly detailed interactive NCJW Chicago North Shore timeline that'll be available on our website later this summer. Watch for it and learn about the impact of great leadership that built sustainable programs in the community and made a difference then and now. Why is this history important? Leadership skills are complex and many-sided, but they are central to building innovative and impactful programs. These are serious times, as they were when Hannah G. Solomon brought us together, and we need to work together now on solutions. Leadership and forming other partners in the community to do so makes a difference. If we want to stand on the shoulders of remarkable work that made our world better, we must be prepared. That is why I am so thrilled that our new leadership program will offer continuity to our future in order to meet the very substantial challenges before us. The Leona Z. Rosenberg Leadership Initiative will have two parts. NCJW Leads, Leadership, Exploration, and Development series will provide in-depth leadership, development, and training to existing NCJW leaders and potential leaders to take on greater roles and responsibility within our section and within our community. NCJW Lifts, Leadership Impact Fellowship Training Series will train new leaders how to lead and lift up voices for the next generation. It'll bring together an annual cohort of 8 to 10 women who seek professional growth, relationship building opportunities, and a higher level of involvement within the NCJW and the progressive community. NCJW Lifts graduates will receive a subsidized registration to NCJW Washington Institute 2022. I am inspired by our history and excited for the future. I hope after tonight's program, you are too. I want to give a special thanks to our past and our new board leadership for all they have done and for all you will do. I want to thank President Debbie Vedinghoff for her leadership and Melissa Prober for her guidance. I especially want to thank Marilyn Cohn, Carol Levine, Sammy Moischenberg, and Anna Rubin, who made tonight possible. And most of all, I want to thank all the past presidents who are here tonight and all who are not. Your contributions made an incredible difference and gives us a path forward. A toast to you all and a toast to us all, and good night.